Alright, listen up. Learning how to do effective hit detection is something that you have to learn how to do if you want to have at least a chance at being a game developer. Also, if you're an OG, you'll remember that I made a similar video to this one in the past, and you might be asking yourself, Ludius, why are you remaking an old video? Simple. The method I used in that video was just trash. I misled people in that video. I didn't know any better at the time, but now I'm a lot more experienced, and so I'm bringing you this new video. Hit detection can be considered as primarily a combat mechanic, but to be honest, it can be used on a bunch of other stuff that are not combat related. But for this video, I'm going to show you how to make it specifically for combat. Also, I recently launched my coaching program where you'll have 3 calls a week with me, where you'll be able to talk to me about the problems you might be facing as a scripter, and I'll help you solve them to the best of my ability. Also, at the end of every month, we'll have a masterclass where I'll teach you how to make a specific feature inside a call, so you'll be able to ask questions along the way, etc. All calls and masterclasses will be recorded, and every month or so I'll be adding a new course to this coaching program until it's complete. What the first course will be decided once we have a couple members, so if you're interested in that, 50% discount for the next week. Check the first link in the description. This said, let's start the video that you actually came to watch. Alright, the first thing I'm gonna say is that if you're very new to scripting, you might think about using .touch for your hit detection. I was guilty of this when I was starting, and that comes with its own set of problems. There are instances where you might want to use .touch, but for the most part, when you're doing hit detection, like for M1s and stuff, you want to use something that we call spatial queries. So I did a little bit more research back when I was a little bit less experienced, and I found out that there's something called spatial queries. And spatial queries are built-in methods that come with Roblox Studio that lets you check for objects within a determined space. I used a lot of flashy words in there, but essentially it just means that it lets you create an invisible hitbox or heat sphere, I guess you could say, into the workspace, and it'll tell you what objects are touching it. It's similar to raycast. If you don't know what raycast is, then this video might be too advanced for you. So in a sense, it's similar to raycast because you don't see the ray when it's casted, but you know it's there. Same principle with this. You also have to know that the best spatial queries to use for hit detection are get part bouncing box and get part bouncing radius. Get part bouncing box, when provided the C-frame of the hitbox as the first argument and the size of it as the second argument, it will create an imaginary hitbox and automatically put everything that's touching said imaginary hitbox inside a table, or in programming words, it returns a table value with all the instances that collided with said hitbox. Get part bouncing radius is essentially the same concept, but instead of a C-frame as the first argument, you just put the position of where you want the hitbox to be, and as the second argument, instead of putting the size, you just put how long the radius of the circle should be. If I'm completely honest, in the majority of the cases, you'll be using get part bouncing box, so I'll give you an example of hit detection using get part bouncing box. I'm gonna use the code that we created in the last video for the M1s. If you're interested in creating M1s, or you want to have the exact code that I have right here, then go ahead and check out the last video. I want the hitbox to appear once the animation event hit has been reached. That's why I have get marker reached signal, and inside this is where we will create our hit detection. First thing I did was create 2 variables, one for the C-frame and another one for the size. After that, I created the imaginary C-frame inside a variable. I'll explain why in a bit. Remember, the first argument is what C-frame should that hitbox have, and the second argument is what size that C-frame should have. Now, why did I create it inside a variable? Because as I explained earlier, it will return a table with everything that's touching the hitbox, meaning it will set this variable to a table containing everything that's touching the hitbox. I created a table called hum's hit, which stands for humanoid's hit. This table will contain all the characters that we've already hit, and I'll explain why in a bit. So the variable create hitbox is a table with every single instance that the hitbox touched. Therefore, we can loop through it so that we can go through all the items that it touched. We want to check if the parts of whatever it touched has a humanoid, because this is how we know that it touched a part of a humanoid that we have to damage. But also we wanted to check if the character that it touched is not really in the hum's hit table, because sometimes it might go through, for example, the arm of the character because it finds the arm, but then it might also go through like the head of the character, and since you don't want the script to damage the same person twice, as soon as it goes through a part of any character, it puts the name of the character inside the table, so that way the script knows that it doesn't need to damage that character anymore because it's already been damaged. Hopefully that makes sense. Also, you want to make sure that the parent of whatever is looping through is not your character, because otherwise it will damage you as well. And under this you put whatever's supposed to happen once the hitbox touches the character. Create a server script called damage inside the M1 local simple script and created a remote function inside that script, got the scripting code inside a variable as well as the remote function, and invoked it to the server. Why? Because if I were to damage the opponent's humanoid here, it won't even work. Inside the script called damage, you get the remote function, receive the invoke by doing remote function.onServer invoke equals function, player as the first argument, char hit as the second argument, and damage as the third argument. Press enter. The first argument is player because when invoking from client to server, the first argument will always be the player that invoked it. Then we have our other two arguments, meaning the character we want to damage and the damage we want it to take. Get the humanoid of the character and just subtract the damage from its health. And if you test this now, you'll see that you can actually damage now. So you've made an effective hit detection system. Remember, if you're somewhat new to game development and you need help, check out my newly created coaching program. It's currently at half price. The price will increase in 1 week, and it includes 3 weekly calls and 1 masterclass at the end of the month. Courses will be added later once we have a couple members. They said, keep leveling up, bro, be safe, and I'll see you when I see you. Peace.